welcome. I'm the Deadwood Jedi. This is another Raid Shadow Legends video. Guys, today I thought I would go over something that I've been getting a lot of comments lately. I've been doing all these Demytha comps, and there's one thing I've kind of neglected to put in there. It's the masteries of these champions, and I've had a lot of comments ask me about this. Now, this is kind of a change I've made over the course of me doing content on YouTube for Raid Shadow Legends. I show the same masteries almost every single time. It doesn't change a lot for clan boss. The masteries aren't super duper unique for what you use, but I understand a lot of you guys, maybe this is your first time watching me, maybe you're new to my channel, maybe you're new to clan boss and you hadn't had to worry about this before when you've been watching my content. And now you're like, wait, what masteries am I supposed to use for these comps, these builds? So what I thought I'd do is I'd go over them. I've done a mastery series before in the past. I did like 3 videos going over each mastery tree, and I definitely recommend check that out. I'll have links to those down below in the comments and the description of this video in case you want to get a little bit more in depth as I go through them a little bit more explicitly. And that hasn't changed over time since I did those. But what I thought I could do today is go over the masteries that are best for clan boss. So if you're building a clan boss team, what masteries are you supposed to choose? And we'll just focus on those today. And I figured that might be really useful for you guys. So it's going to be a little bit dry, but I figured this is probably one of those most important videos you're going to have because you have your masteries on every single champion you use. And masteries can have a major impact. In fact, 99% of the time when you screw up your clan boss team, when it doesn't work the way it's supposed to, it's because you have the wrong masteries. And that's not an exaggeration. It really is like 99% of the time. It's the masteries that are off. So I figured we'd go over that today and make it nice and easy so you guys can understand, you know what to look for, and we'll just get into it. So that's what we're going to do today. Sit back, enjoy. If you find this content useful though, please take the time to subscribe. It really does make a huge difference to my channel. That said, let's get into it. So when we're talking about masteries for our champions and clan boss, there's a few things we have to keep in mind. There's 2 big distinct things that we have to keep in mind. One is we need to figure out what type of clan boss team we're running, because the type of team is going to have a big effect over the masteries we choose. The other thing is going to be what kind of attacks do our champions make? What do we need as far as attributes and skills from the masteries for our champions to be successful? So let's start the first part here. Let's talk about the champions themselves. What do they need? And then later on, we're going to go into the 3 different, what I like to think are 3 different types of teams and the clan boss masteries you're going to want to use for those, including what you're going to want to use for unkillable teams with a champion like Demytha. So we'll get to that. Just give us a little bit. I want to go over the champion part of it first, because I think this is the most basic part of it. So we have a perfect champion here to give us an example of the offensive aspect of things in Rowan. Rowan is a great champion. I mean, mediocre for most things, but she's really good for the budget unkillable team, which a lot of people run as a stun target. And it has to do with the way there's cooldowns in Painkeeper and her skills. Now, one of the biggest things when we're talking about masteries, unless we can go ahead and click over here, one of the biggest things are these offensive stats, right? And the biggest one is War Master and Giant Slayer. I always have people asking me, hey, can I build this? Can I use this clan boss team on hard? Can I use this on brutal? And I always say it doesn't matter. If you're trying to succeed at the hard level or earlier for clan boss, when people go, why don't you build teams for that? It's because all you need to be successful there is Giant Slayer or War Master in all your champions. If your champions are mastered, those 2 skills will do enough damage by themselves to guarantee you getting to that top chest. Even on brutal, most of the time, that's enough, right? You maybe have to do a little tweaking with the champions you bring in, but it really doesn't take a lot because these skills can do so much damage for you. And now, why do they do so much damage? Well, they're both based on max HP. The War Master, every time you make an attack, you have a 60% chance of proccing this ability, and this mastery here will do damage based off the max HP. Now, against the clan boss, whether you're choosing War Master or you're choosing Giant Slayer, it's going to be the same damage. It's just the way the what do you call it? The passive abilities work to reduce damage and stuff against the clan boss. They do the same amount of damage. Now, against Giant Slayer, you have a 30% chance of getting this bonus on every hit. So if you have a multi-hit attack, like Rosin's A1 is a 3-hit attack, you have a 30% chance of getting this ability, this mastery to proc every single time, every single hit. So 3 times you're in that 30% chance. Whereas with War Master, you will have a 60% chance, but on each attack, regardless of the number of attacks you have. The long and short of it is the more hits each attack does, the more likely you are to take Giant Slayer. But it matters which champion, what attacks, what skills they have. So if we look at a champion like Rowan here, Rowan has 3 skills, right? They happen on 3 turns. So if I'm trying to figure out how much damage will War Master do, how often will that proc versus how often will Giant Slayer proc, what I need to do is I need to balance what's the percentage chance of War Master proc, how many times is War Master going to proc as she goes through all of her skills versus how many times is Giant Slayer going to proc every time she goes through those skills. So it's the same number of skills, right? So she has 3 skills on 3-turn cooldown, right? So because it takes her 3 turns to cycle through all of her abilities, that's simple for War Master. We know we're going to get 3 attempts at it as she goes through all of her skills. So 3 attempts with a 60% chance to happen is going to be basically boils down to 1.8 times War Master should proc. You take, 6 times 3 is 18. 3 times 0.6 is 1.8 times. It should happen on average. Now, it's not going to happen every time, but on average. Now, to do the Giant Slayer version of that, where it's based off the number of hits, it takes a little bit more math, right? We go in and we count. Well, there's 1 attack on the A1. There's 3 more attacks on the A2. And then there's 4 more attacks on the A3. So we have a total of 8 hits. So we need to calculate. After that, she goes through her whole cycle, right? So 8 hits times 0.3% chance to get it with the Giant Slayer, right? If we go back here and we can see, I think we can see, I got to click Masteries here. We go back here and we see Giant Slayer, 30% chance to inflict this damage when attacking. It's on each hit, right? So 30% chance times 8, right? So 0.3 times 8 is going to give you 2.4 times that's going to proc. So 3 times 8 is 24. 3 times 0.3 times 8 is 2.4 times. So with Giant Slayer, we're going to have a much greater chance of that proccing rather than War Master for Rowan because she has so many skills, right? That's over the same 3-turn time period. Over those 3 attacks, we're getting 1.8 procs of War Master and we're getting 2.4 procs of Giant Slayer. So for a champion like Rowan, we would want to choose Giant Slayer. In general, if a champion has 3 attacks or more per hit on average, you're going to want to choose Giant Slayer. So that's one of the biggest things that you're going to want to choose because that's obviously just a lot more damage. Each one of those procs, it not only can be affected by decreased defense, can be affected by weakened. This is why those debuffs are so important to bring when you're in the clan boss, but they do a lot of damage. They do like 60, 70, 80,000 damage every time it goes. And because, as you can see, it's happening pretty regularly, right? Somewhere between 2 and, at the very least, it's happening 60% of the time. And it can happen even more than that, depending on the champion and the skills they're using. And so it becomes really useful because it's a huge source of damage for us. That's why a lot of times when I show a team, I'm like, they're not even mastered. It's a big difference because that can be a big source of damage for us. And so that team can do a lot more damage if everybody was mastered. So that's the first thing, the offensive part of it. Now, there's one other part to this where it really depends what champions you're bringing. And that has to do with the support masteries, right? So one of the things I always look at, and this is really important when you're an early level account or a mid-level account and you're struggling to get to certain numbers, is you want to know, do I have enough accuracy to land my debuffs? If you do, then you can go down the defensive tree. No worries. And almost always the defensive tree is a better option. But if you don't, then you can go down the support tree because the support tree has bonus accuracy. You get 10 accuracy here. You can get another 20 accuracy here if a skill's not on cooldown. You can get another 4 accuracy here if you're facing the boss because they're an enemy that's alive, right? So at the very least, you can have 14 accuracy. At the most, you can have an extra 34 accuracy. Not only that, but you can take Lure of Steel, which will increase the bonus of artifact sets, including accuracy and perception sets. So if you're really short on accuracy, support tree can be an awesome, awesome way to go. And those are the 2 big things that I look at when I'm going, okay, is this a defensive champion or is this a support champion? It's the accuracy. That's like the number one thing I'm looking at for that. And with early level accounts, mid-level accounts, getting that accuracy bonus is really important. Now for me, that's not an issue. And the reason why is because I'm in the end game. My Great Hall, my accuracy is max. I have an extra 80 accuracy on top of whatever else I'm putting on my champion. So my champions are usually starting at 80. I only have to find like another, 140 accuracy or so to put myself at Ultra Nightmare accuracy levels. If I put 2 accuracy sets on, that's another 80 right there. If I put an accuracy banner on, that's at least another 80. If it's only a 5-star, it's another 96 if it's a 6-star piece. So it doesn't take a lot to get to that level. I can usually find it just in the substats. Sometimes I don't even need the banner. But if you're early, if this isn't max, you're getting an extra 10, 20. It's not quite the same. And so it becomes a lot harder to get to those accuracy levels, especially when you consider Ultra Nightmare. You really want to have 225 accuracy as a minimum. So it can be a little bit tougher to get there. So for early game accounts, I definitely recommend, try that support tree. It can really get you the accuracy level you need to be successful. Otherwise, the defensive tree is a wonderful way to go because there's ways to get extra attacks in there, which actually takes me to the different clan boss teams. That's the big thing with the champions themselves, right? What kind of offensive masteries are we going with? Are we going with Giant Slayer War Master? Number 1 question. Number 2 question, do we need extra accuracy or don't we? And if we don't, this leads us into traditional clan boss teams. Traditional clan boss teams obviously have a bit of a challenge in that they have to survive, right? You have to take hits, you have to survive through them. And not only that, it becomes challenging, right? You have to heal up, all that stuff. And so this is why with traditional clan boss teams, my go-to almost always is the defensive tree. Now, there's exceptions to every rule, and I will show you one of them in a minute. But the defensive tree to me seems to be one of the best trees because it mitigates a lot of damage, way more than you might expect. And it all starts here with, obviously, you get some straight defense. That's nice. Not a big deal, but it's nice. But then it comes down to the rest of the tree. There's 2 big masteries that a lot of people take right here. One of them is blast proof. This actually decreases the damage you take from those big AoE hits by 5%. When you add that on top of whatever defense you already have, because it's calculated a little bit separately, it's actually very effective for you and can make a big difference. The other one is rejuvenation. This one's a little bit broken. It says you increase the healing and the shield buffs that champion receives by 5%. In practice, I believe this is actually considerably larger than that. It's not enough to, heal you on its own, but it does make a difference as far as the healing that you get. It makes an even bigger difference when you're bringing in shield champions like Taragi the Frog, Underpriest Brogni, or Valkyrie. So every time I have a Valkyrie team or a Brogni team, I always take rejuvenation. I think it's way valuable. In fact, more valuable than some of the offensive masteries I could take instead. So a lot of times I prefer to stay alive longer rather than hit harder early. That's a choice everybody can make. But those are 2 masteries that I take a lot. The other ones that I like to take, Resurgent, and this for clan bosses is not as important really. But what is important, and this one does a lot to mitigate damage as well, is delay death. You survive so many turns, you take so many hits. Every time you get that hit, you reduce the damage by 0.75 every time you get that hit, eventually reducing it by 6%. So we're getting a 5% damage reduction here. We're getting another 6% damage reduction here. That can make a major difference for your clan boss team, for your champions as far as staying alive. The very last ones, and this is the one that's really nice, is Retribution. And this one is unbelievably underrated as far as how good of a mastery this is, especially for clan boss. If you take 25% of your damage is lost, your max HP is lost from a single skill, not hit, but from a single enemy skill, you have a 50% chance to counterattack. So if you think about how important a champion like Valkyrie or Martyr or Skullcrusher is for giving you counterattack in your clan boss teams, this mastery does half as good a job, right? If you take damage, it'll give you that chance to counterattack. And that if you don't have counterattack already in your team, this becomes super valuable because every time you counterattack, that's just free damage, right? That's just extra damage your champion's getting. It's an extra turn. And counterattack doesn't do as much damage, does 75% as much damage as the normal attack, but it's still really strong and can be really, really helpful for you. So that is one of the things I love to go down to in the defensive tree. The other one that can be really useful, and this is more specific to the type of team you're running. If you have a cleanser, this is good. If you use block debuff, not really necessary, is deterrence, where you have a 20% chance to counterattack an enemy when they apply a stun, sleep, fear, true fear, or freeze debuff. Did you hear me say stun? What does the clan boss do? Stuns your champion. So if you have this on your champions, you got a 1 in 5 chance that when the clan boss stuns somebody, everybody else gets a free counterattack. That's a pretty good thing, right? Like I said, counterattack is just extra damage. Super helpful. Super, super helpful. The other way you can go, though, this is not the only way to do it. We talked earlier about, hey, sometimes your champions need, a little bit more accuracy or something. Totally get that. And it's very common and in a lot of cases recommended to go down the support tree instead. Like I said, especially if you're early or mid game, it can be really, really useful. So what I'm going to do is I need to pull out Taragi the Frog here because I have him. I was running a traditional clan boss team. I was running that Pavo team before and incredibly, incredibly good. And so I have him in the support tree, as you can see right there. Now, big reason why I had him in the support tree actually had nothing to do with accuracy. Me getting accuracy on my champions, like I said before, wasn't an issue. But with Taragi has some interesting skills. If we look at his skills here, he's basically this passive, right? Where he has a 50% chance of placing a poison debuff on the attacker for 2 turns every time he's hit. Well, 50% is okay, but it's definitely not great, not all the time, and not in my teams where he's the only poisoner there. So for me, what I want to do, as you can see, I didn't need the accuracy, but what I did want to do is I wanted to come down here to Sniper, and I wanted to come down here to Master Hexer. And this was just going to up the damage, up the percentage chance that poison gets laid, and up the time that it stays on with Master Hexer. Master Hexer extends the duration. Sniper gives you an extra chance to place the debuffs. So now it's a 55% chance and it'll land for 2 or 3 turns. And that made a really big difference as far as my damage went, right? Not to mention I have him in almost all HP gear. And so HP gear with the Lore Steel, it gets a little bonus. That's great. There's other things you can take here too, right? I talked about taking the accuracy from pinpoint accuracy and from charge focus. The other one you can do is Steadfast, and Steadfast can be really useful. I actually use Steadfast a lot on my speed lead champion. So when I run a team with a Deacon Armstrong, for example, man, everybody is in the vault right now. But when I run a speed team with Deacon Armstrong, for example, let me get some of these guys out of the way. Oh man. Okay, if I run a team with Deacon Armstrong, I don't want Deacon Armstrong taking the stun, but I do want Deacon speed lead aura, right? So it becomes really tricky to make it so how do I get it so that he can be the aura but not take the stun? Well, one of the ways you can do that and help guide where the stun goes is by taking Steadfast. Steadfast is a great mastery. It's an interesting thing that when the clan boss tries to stun you, he tries to avoid champions with Steadfast. If everything's equal, right? They're the same affinity, they have the same HP levels, they have the same buffs on, the clan boss will take the champion that does not have Steadfast. Basically, he looks at that as having an extra buff on that he doesn't want to attack. And so this can be a really useful way to help guide the stun away. Now, it's not as strong a deterrent as things like counterattack or increased defense or reflect damage, the other 3 buffs that the clan boss really tries to avoid. But like I said, all things equal, that can be the difference. And when I run a team that especially with shields and stuff, almost everybody has the same HP all the time. It's not really an issue. So all I need to do is make sure they avoid my lead champion. As long as I have another spirit champion on the team, they'll take the stun instead. And so it works really, really well. I would run it with Iron Brago. Iron Brago would take the stun in place of Deacon Armstrong. So this really covers most of the masteries. Now there's a couple things I need to point out here. There are some amazing masteries that you absolutely cannot ever take if you're running clan boss. And it's really important to understand this. I think I can just choose any champion here, really. Let's go ahead. Yes, perfect. We'll go with Lysandra. Lysandra's going to have almost every single mastery that we want to avoid. And the reason why you want to avoid these masteries is because they will do one of 2 things. They will affect turn meter, or they will affect the duration, like the cooldown of your skills. And you go, wait, if my skills cool down faster, isn't that good? Yes, sometimes. But if those skills affect speed or turn meter, or they affect buffs that keep you alive, like, I don't know, block damage, unkillable, then if the timing of those skills is important, then you don't want them cooling down sooner or later because that'll throw off your speed tune. So these are the masteries you absolutely 100% want to avoid. The first one, rapid response. Every time you have a 30% chance of increasing the turn meter when a buff is removed or expires. Well, I mean, like we said, if you increase the turn meter, if you make a champion go faster, all of a sudden your speed tune's going to be thrown off. Your clan boss team isn't going to work the way it's supposed to. So you have to avoid that. You want to avoid arcane celerity. It does exact opposite. When a debuff falls off, you have a chance for a turn meter boost. So like either of those things are very common because they're great in other areas of the game. They're great in dungeons, they're great in campaign, they're great in Doom Tower, they're wonderful in arena. They're absolutely awful for clan boss. So don't pick it if you're doing clan boss. The other one is going to be Cycle of Magic. Now, this is a great skill. And if you have a damage champion, someone that doesn't affect turn meter at all, this is actually a wonderful skill. If you have a Draco or an Urogrim and you just want them to do more damage more often, this can be a really useful skill to put on them. But if you have somebody that affects turn meter, this is bad, right? Just simple. So if you have a Demitha, a Tower, Sir Nicholas, a Man-Eater, where you need to have that unkillable ability going up at the right time, you can't take this because it will throw off that timing. If you have an Eris or a Deacon or somebody else that affects turn meter and speed, you can't have this, a Seeker, because it'll throw off the timing. So just be aware of that. One other skill that you got to be really careful of here in the support tree too, lasting gifts. And you might go, wait a minute. Having my buffs on longer is a good thing, right? It can be. But also remember when we said we want to make sure the stun goes to specific spots? So if you have a champion like a Skullcrusher, like a Valkyrie, right? Even somebody like an Alton, someone that gives you increased defense or gives you counterattack or gives you reflect damage, the three buffs that the clan boss likes to avoid. Well, if you extend those buffs by one turn, which is what this skill does 30% of the time, the clan boss will then avoid that champion when the stun comes around. It doesn't mean you can't ever use this skill, but I generally avoid it in clan boss because the timing of things is so delicate. If I'm casting counterattack with Valkyrie, well, if lasting gifts is on, sometimes that can extend to the champion I want to take the stun. And if that happens, that means the clan boss is going to look for somebody else, maybe somebody a little squishier or somebody more vital to me that I really can't afford to have get stunned. So you got to be really careful with this one. And then the very last one you're going to have to watch out for is going to be Cycle of Revenge. This is another one that gets chosen a lot. It's because every time you get hit or an ally is hit with a critical hit, there's a chance to get a 15% turn meter boost. And again, what do we talk about? Turn meter boost randomly is going to throw off our speed tune. So this is why we don't choose those skills. It's very, very important. And then, that's pretty much the meat and bones of it right there. So that's the traditional teams. Now let's talk about unkillable teams, because this is what a lot of us want to run, or we actually do run, and it's very effective for us. But as far as masteries go, the offense and defensive tree, there's a couple little nuances that you're going to want to be aware of, but generally follows by the same rules. So let's take Demitha, for example, right? She's my block damage champion, right? So what are the things we need to think about when we're talking about block damage? One, we're not taking any hits whatsoever. So you can already see what skill is not going to help us at all. A couple of the skills I actually chose, right? This one, Retribution, you're not taking any damage, so there's no chance to get counterattack from it. This skill, absolutely useless. However, in these Myth Eris teams, one thing that does happen is we do take the stun. We're relying on cleansing rather than blocking debuffs. So because we're relying on cleansing, one of the things we can do is we can take deterrence. Because every time that stun happens, we now have a chance, small, but a chance to get a free counterattack in there. That's always useful. Now, if I was running a traditional team like I had with like Underpriest, Brogni, and Taragi, well, we're blocking the debuff. So we will never take deterrence. We'll never be able to get that stun counterattack. I mean, we can take it, but we're not going to get the counterattack. But we will be taking damage, so something like Retribution's beneficial. This is mostly the opposite of that. One of the other things that we want to be aware of is there's two offensive skills that are really valuable that can help us with Unkillable. So there's this one, Grim Resolve. So when you have less than 50% HP, you do more damage. And then there's this one, Heart of Glory, where when you have more than 50, when you have full HP, you do extra damage. Depending on what you're doing, you're going to want to pick one or the other. Now, again, we're not taking any damage from this. So a skill like Life Drinker isn't going to help us. But when we talk unkillable teams where you do take damage, something like from a Man-Eater, then Life Drinker can be really helpful. And part of the reason why is this Retribution skill, right? We have to have at least 25% HP to lose 25% HP and perchance proc this. Having Life Drinker on our champions will help us heal up, especially if they're heavy hitters. They have 100% crit rate, good crit damage. You can heal up more than half your health just from your normal attacks without having to worry about lifesteal gear or artificial healing from other sources. You can just rely on Life Drinker. And that can be enough to heal you up so that the next time you get attacked, you have that 50% chance for counterattack. So it's kind of a free way and an easy way to get counterattacks in. So whenever you have a Man-Eater team or a Sir Nicholas team, 100% I recommend take Life Drinker, take Grim Resolve, and take Retribution. You'll get free counterattacks that way, you'll heal up more often, and you'll deal just a little bit more damage. If you're doing a block damage team like with a Tower or Demitha, 100% I recommend taking Heart of Glory. And if it's a team where you're cleansing the debuff and not blocking it, then I really recommend going to Deterrence. Now, here's the thing. Why do defense tree at all? Why not just do support tree? Honestly, it doesn't really matter, right? You're blocking the damage. So it just depends. Do you need accuracy? Do you want to extend the debuffs, right? If we're talking about the support tree, right? You can do things like Sniper and get a better chance to land debuffs. You can do a thing like Master Hexer, potentially extend them. You can, get some extra accuracy in your build. You can even try and get your cooldowns faster for your DPS champions, or potentially extend the duration of buffs depending on the buffs you're casting. So like things like increase attack or not increase defense, but increase attack's a good one. Ally protection's a good one. Block debuffs is a good one. Those are all buffs you can increase crit rate, crit damage, right? I'm thinking of them off the top of my head. These are all buffs that can be extended and won't hurt your team. Same thing with Laura Steel. All Laura Steel does is add speed to your build. You just have to factor it in when you're speed tuning it, but all it does is add stats to your build. So all of those can be really, really good, but it depends on the champion. If I take a champion like, I don't know, who can I choose here? Well, I take a champion like Draco, right? Champion like Draco is a great example of this. Has weaken and decrease defense, has poisons, all those things, but you don't need Sniper for any of them. You don't need Sniper for any of them. The reason why is they're all 100% chance to land when booked. If they're 100% chance, you don't need that extra 5%, right? But one thing you can do is take Master Hexer and extend them. That's definitely a good thing. But you also got to be careful. You can only have 10 debuffs on the clan boss. So sometimes taking Master Hexer can be detrimental, right? If you're going to overfill the debuff bar, maybe that means you don't actually have as many debuffs up as you would like. So maybe it's not always beneficial. I would much rather have decreased defense and weaken up than any one of these poisons. So if I take Master Hexer and extends these poisons, and it means that at some point I have too many debuffs and I can't place my decreased defense and weaken, then I'm not going to take Master Hexer, because this is the more important of the skills. So understanding the champions, understanding the skills, the debuffs, the buffs they bring can be a big factor in this. If I have a champion like, let's see if I have her here. Maybe I don't. If I have a champion like, say, Kreela, right? Kreela is a wonderful champion, and she places, not only does she have the ally attack, but she also has increased attack. She also has increased crit rate. You could take a champion like Doom Priest in this case. Same thing. They have amazing buffs that don't affect where the stun goes. You can take lasting gifts on them and have those buffs extend a little bit longer, and it won't hurt you. Again, I would definitely recommend the defensive tree for most builds, but if you have a block damage build where you're not taking damage, where you're not going to get those free counterattacks, in those cases, and those cases alone, I would highly consider going down the support tree to maybe extend those buffs or extend those debuffs, reduce those cooldowns for the DPS champions, right? For the champions that you can't do that with, right? Towers, Sir Nicholas's, Man-Eaters, Demithas, those champions that are warcasters that, you need those block damage or unkillable buffs at a certain time, or champions that are giving you speed, Apothecary, High Katoon, Seeker, Deacon Armstrong, Mashald, and of course, Eris. Any of those champions, you're not going to want to mess with their cooldowns either, because it's going to have a major, major impact on the speed tune that you're building. So I know this was a bit of a long video, but I wanted to make sure we got through all of these things. I feel like it is really important to understand how masteries work, and I try to explain it fairly thoroughly for those of you that are doing clan boss teams. Now, There's always exceptions to every rule, right? Not everything has to be the same. I don't need the damage reduction when I'm doing killables, but maybe I want to try something a little bit different for these things. That Taragi build is kind of unique. Normally I would go down the defensive tree, especially for an ally protection champion to help them stay alive, but with Taragi, it's a bit of a unique situation, right? So it's a little bit different. There's alternate builds as well, right? When I'm going down the mastery tree for the support tree, sometimes if I have a healer, I'll go down the far left side so I can just add as much healing possible to my team. That's okay too. That's what you do a lot of times with like a Deacon Armstrong or even a Battle Khazar. There's multiple ways to do this, but these are the, like, I would say 98% of the time, these are the masteries you're going to choose. They don't change a lot, right? The offensive tree, you just go down that far left side. There's not a lot you have to do in between there. There's a couple of small alternative things that you can do, but honestly, it's not really worth stressing over, right? Pretty much you go down that left side. If you have to go to, one of the other, you go down the Giant Slayer, just move over a little bit. It's not that complex. And that's why I don't always show them in my videos. It just adds time to the videos. And if you've seen one of my videos, it's just like, you're like, I know what these are. This doesn't need to be shown again. But hopefully this is helpful. And I understand if you need to, if you don't know, you don't know. And so it's good to go over these things periodically and kind of reinforce, hey, these are the masteries you're going to want to choose for these champions. This is why you want to choose them. It's really important to make sure you get those right because, like I said, most speed tunes, when they screw up, it has to do with the masteries, almost always. It's surprising how often that is the case. And, understand that too. When you're looking at different websites like Ayumi Love, like Hell Hades does a good job of like showing, hey, these are clan boss masteries. But a lot of times those masteries aren't designed specifically for clan boss. They're more general work. So dungeon work, Doom Tower stuff, arena builds. They're not always designed specifically for clan boss. So you have to make a little bit of a distinction with what, how you're going to make your champions, how you're going to build them. And you have to understand that. Otherwise it's just going to screw you up a little bit. Obviously if you're running a pure speed team and you don't care about tuning, that's fine. It's fine. Take all the masteries you can, right? Get as much speed in as possible. But most of us don't do that. Most of us are actually trying to speed tune our teams to get the most damage possible out of our champions. And in those cases, you need to know what you're choosing. So hopefully this was helpful for you guys. If you did find this helpful and informative, please hit that subscribe button. Definitely good. Leave a comment down below too. I would love to hear, like, look, we've all made mistakes when it comes to masteries. I still make mistakes to this day. It is not an uncommon thing for me. So, if you have a good mistake story, you can share that down below. If you have, some insight that you may have drawn, maybe I missed something that you think is worth pointing out, go ahead and leave that comment down below too. Definitely love hearing from you guys. And yeah, that's it for today. So till next we meet, I'm the Deadwood Jedi.